Picture this: a courtroom charged with drama, cameras capturing every moment, millions of viewers watching in rapt attention, and then, out of nowhere, the unthinkable occurs. Kody Brown, already notorious for his complicated array of marriages and family chaos, shocks everyone with a bombshell no one predicted. With icy gaze and firm tone, Kody orders his fifth wife's arrest on live court television. Gasps ring out. The judge halts mid-movement. Officers hesitate, unsure whether to advance. And amidst the chaos, Robyn, Kody's most devoted and loyal wife, completely loses her cool. That moment was more than a scene in the courtroom. It was a public meltdown, a family unraveling in front of millions of people. And when the cameras cut to Robyn's shaking face, one thing was certain: the Browns would never be the same. From the start, the hearing seemed different. The air was charged with tension, the quiet thick with anticipation, as though all of them sensed something was going to blow. Reporters murmured, fans listened, and hashtags began trending long before the first statement was made. Kody sat stiffly, arms folded, his jaw gritted. Facing him was the woman at the center of the storm, the supposed fifth wife, stern, her eyes flicking frantically about the courtroom. The judge called for order, but Kody came straight to the point with his ultimatum. "Your Honor, she must be arrested. She has betrayed me, betrayed my family, and placed us all in danger." The words struck like a hammer. The fifth wife's mouth dropped, her face whitening as officers started moving towards her. The audience gasped in shock. Reporters' pens scratched frantically. And Robyn? Robyn stared as if her whole world had been torn in half. It began like any other morning in court. Or at least that's what they thought. The gleaming wood benches, the sound of papers rustling, the cracking sound of the judge's gavel, all the familiar hallmarks of justice and order. But what none of them knew, as the cameras rolled on, and the microphones captured every move, was that this very hearing was going to be one of the most indelible moments in the history of live TV. Air was charged with anticipation, even before a single word had been spoken. The court was not only crowded with lawyers and officials, it was mobbed with journalists, cameramen, and even interested onlookers, who had somehow found a seat. There was a hum, a nervous tension, the sort of thing that makes you know something is going to blow at any moment. And in the middle of it all was Kody Brown. His back was rigid, his eyes fixed directly ahead, and his jaw so tight it appeared to be ready to snap. Anyone who had known him, or had at least seen him wrestle his way through the glare of fame, could feel something fermenting beneath the surface. Kody wasn't here for justice. Kody was here to make a point. Throughout the courtroom, the woman that people were all speculating about was sitting quietly, the supposed fifth wife. Some described her as mysterious, others as manipulative, and a few even said she was misjudged. But regardless of what people believed about which version, everyone was looking at her. Her complexion was pale, her hands folded in her lap, and her silence shouted louder than anything that she could have said. The judge cleared his throat, bringing the session to order. "This hearing will go forward with fairness and decorum," he announced, his tone bearing the ring of habitual authority. But the fact was, there existed no such concept as fairness and decorum in a courtroom on television before millions. The world wasn't watching for justice. They were watching for drama. The atmosphere was already thick. But then Kody stood. Slowly, deliberately, he rose from his chair, his eyes never leaving the woman across from him. Cameras zoomed in instantly, eager to capture the fire in his gaze. "Your Honor," he began, his voice steady but dripping with something darker. "This woman has betrayed me. She has betrayed my family, and she has endangered everything we have built." The room gasped. Newsmen's pens struck the paper so quickly, they nearly ripped through it. Cameramen edged forward, readjusting their focus. And the viewers at home, they leaned in closer to their TV screens, hanging on every word. Kody's next few words would turn the whole courtroom around. "I want her arrested. Right here. Right now. For the offenses she has committed against me, against my family, and against the very fabric of my kin." It was like a clap of thunder. His demand was heard, and the room was silent, frozen in shock for a split second. The judge's eyes were wide. The officers standing off to one side looked at each other in confusion, and then the whisper started shocked. Murmured words that filled the room like a cloud of bees. The fifth wife's lips parted, but nothing emerged. Her face stayed still in shock, as if she could not believe what was occurring. One moment she sat quietly, anticipating possibly an argument, possibly accusations, but not this, not public. Live shame before the world. And then the cameras captured the most searing photograph of the day. Robyn Brown's expression. Robyn was always Kody's toughest supporter. Through the years of family drama, through wives departing, through constant fan criticism, Robyn had remained loyal. She defended him, she stood by him, and she took responsibility for his actions even when others would not. But in that moment, sitting in that courtroom, listening to Kody call for the arrest of wife number 5, something within her snapped. Her eyes went wide. Her mouth fell open slightly. She shook her head slowly, as though she couldn't believe what had just come out of her husband's lips. And then the tears began to well up. At-home viewers immediately caught on. Social media erupted within seconds. Did you see Robyn's face? She is wrecked. Is this the moment Robyn realizes once and for all who Kody truly is? I've never seen her so broken. Wow. The camera switched back to Kody, who stood with his shoulders back, firm in his request, as if he had just planted a bombshell of reality that would exonerate him. But the world did not witness exoneration. They witnessed a man using the courtroom, using live television, to shatter a person whom he asserted had betrayed him. The judge held up a hand, attempting to restore order. Mr. Brown, this is extremely irregular. If you want to pursue charges, there are formal protocols. But Kody interrupted him. No, she's not leaving this courtroom today. She will distort the facts, play with the public, and spin this into another circus. I won't let her do it. Arrest her now. By that time, the police officers had emerged. Tentatively, hesitantly, they were making their way toward the woman. The cameras cut between her shaking figure, Kody's blazing glare, and Robyn's crumbling demeanor. It was a trinity of mayhem. Accuser, accused, and wife who'd finally witnessed too much. The supposed fifth wife remained motionless. Her silence was deafening, her immobility more effective than any cry out. Guilt, shock, or fear of a man who was seemingly eager to humiliate her in public. Whatever the price. The murmurs in the courtroom had turned into full-blown conversation. The judge's gavel struck again and again, but it was futile. The hearing had long since gotten out of hand. The citizens weren't paying attention to him. They were witnessing the Browns implode. And then came the instant that would set the day apart forever. Robyn could remain quiet no longer. She thumped her hand on the bench, the noise ringing out over the courtroom commotion. Her chair scraped as she leaped to her feet. Her tears flowed down, but her voice cut like a blade. Stop this madness, she shouted. The entire courtroom froze. Officers stopped mid-step. The alleged fifth wife turned toward her, eyes wide in disbelief. The judge stared, mouth slightly open. Even Kody, for the first time that day, looked shaken. Robyn pointed at her husband, her hand trembling. This isn't justice. This is cruelty. This is humiliation on live television. And you're the one destroying us, not her. The camera zoomed in, catching every tear, every break in her voice. Millions of people at home sat tongue-tied. Robyn, the woman who had always been Kody's protector, was shattering in front of them all. That was when the courtroom ceased to be about accusations, or betrayal, or law. It became something more. It became something about a family disintegrating on television, about loyalty reducing to ash, and about a woman finally having reached her breaking point. By the time the judge reasserted control, by the time the officers backed up, by the time Kody balled his fists in anger, everyone watching was certain of one thing. This was not another courtroom soap opera. This was making history. And for Robyn Brown, for Kody Brown, for the so-called fifth wife, and for all viewers stuck to their screens, nothing would ever be the same again. Robyn had been Kody's most vocal defender for years. Regardless of how terrible the drama was, whether Christine left, Mary got benched, or Janelle confronted him, Robyn remained by Kody's side. She was the one attempting to keep the family intact as everyone else was exiting. But this time, something broke. When officers moved towards the fifth wife, Robyn jumped up from her chair. Her chair scraping across the floor brought the room to silence. Her eyes were brimming with tears, but her voice was tense and slicing like a knife. "Stop this madness. You can't do this, Kody." Everyone froze. Cameras, reporters, even the judge. Robyn pointed at Kody with shaking hands. "This isn't justice. This is humiliation. You're destroying this family. And you're doing it live on television for the whole world to see." The courtroom erupted. Some gasped, some whispered, and millions viewing at home craned forward in their seats. Robyn, the woman who had always stood up for Kody, was finally fighting back against him. The courtroom had already been shaken by Kody's astonishing request, but there was nothing, and I mean nothing, anyone could have been prepared for what followed. Robyn Brown, the wife who had dedicated years of her life to shielding Kody's reputation, the woman who had stood up for him against his critics, family members, and even his former wives who had left, finally snapped, and she snapped on live television, in front of millions of people. Her response was initially subtle. Her head was seen shaking slowly, her lips quivering as if she was mouthing, "No, no, no," silently. Her hand went to her face, attempting to suppress a sob, yet the tears were welling up in her eyes. For those who had watched her, this came as a shock. Robyn had always been poised, even when the world ridiculed her for being Kody's favorite. This was unadulterated pain. The fifth wife sat quietly, the officers still standing around, awaiting instructions. Kody stood firm, eyes burning, waiting for the judge to hear his ultimatum, and between them sat Robyn, who suddenly seemed like a woman caught between loyalty and reality. And then, it happened. Robyn punched her hand against the wooden bench, the loud crack ringing through the courtroom like gunfire. Her chair squealed in protest as she leapt to her feet, her voice slicing through the tension like a knife. "Stop this madness," she yelled. The room was transfixed. The judge's gavel hung suspended. The officers stood still. Even the fifth wife turned, her eyes saucer-wide in shock. For a few seconds, the courtroom fell silent. Not even a sound of scribbling reporters. Robyn was not only talking, she was letting loose years of pent-up anger, hurt, and disillusionment. Her words poured out in waves, shaking but hot. "Kody, what are you doing? This isn't justice. This isn't protection. This is cruelty. You are humiliating this woman, humiliating this family, and you're doing it live on television." The crowd gasped, and social media went wild in a moment. Fans who had spent years condemning Robyn for never coming down on Kody had finally gotten a glimpse of a whole different kind of Robyn. Tweets erupted across timelines. "Did Robyn just snap on Kody? Live? This is the Robyn we've been waiting for. She's finally speaking out. I never thought I'd feel sympathy for her. But wow, she looks devastated." Within the courtroom, Robyn's voice trembled, yet her words were only stronger. She pointed squarely at her husband, sobbing uncontrollably. "You say she betrayed you. But what about the promises that were betrayed? What about the vows that were broken to each and every one of us? How could you stand there playing the victim when you're destroying all those who trusted you?" The cameras zoomed in tight, catching every flutter of feeling on her face. Millions watched, mesmerized, unable to turn their eyes away from the moment that was redefining everything they believed they knew about the Brown family dynamic. Kody's face contorted in rage, his jaw muscularly clenched, his eyes narrowed, and a sick red flush traveled up his neck. He thumped his hand on the table so forcefully that papers flew around. "That's enough, Robyn," he shouted. "You have no idea what she's done. You can't possibly understand the danger she's introduced into our lives." But Robyn didn't flinch. For the first time in years, she wasn't shrinking back. She wasn't deflecting. She wasn't protecting Kody. She was standing her ground. Her voice cracked with emotion, but the fire in her words was undeniable. "No, Kody, the danger isn't her. The danger is what you've become." The room exploded. Gasps, murmurs, even a few screams from the gallery filled the air. The judge hammered his gavel wildly, yelling for silence. But nobody was paying attention. Everybody was transfixed by the marriage disintegrating before them. Robyn's meltdown wasn't solely about the fifth wife. It was about years of pent-up resentment finally reaching a boil. The isolation of seeing wives come and go. The weariness of shouldering Kody's responsibilities. The embarrassment of justifying a man whose behavior only became more difficult to excuse. In that moment, all the hurt she had swallowed for years came pouring out. The fifth wife looked at her with shock and relief. She was no longer alone for the first time since the ordeal started. Robyn, Kody's strongest supporter, was now standing up to him. The cameras recorded her eyes brimming over with tears. Her silent cry for mercy now echoed by Robyn's outburst. Social media, meanwhile, was utterly meltdown mode. Live reaction clips were appearing instantly. Comment streams imploded. Robyn versus Kody live. I don't believe this is happening. This is more than the Christine breakup. This is nuclear. Robyn just publicly shamed Kody in front of the entire world. The tension in the courtroom was unbearable. The judge kept demanding order, his voice drowned out by the chaos. Officers exchanged glances, uncertain whether to move forward with the arrest or wait for instructions. And Kody, he was fuming, his carefully crafted control slipping further with every passing second. "Robyn, sit down," he roared. "You're embarrassing yourself. You're embarrassing me." But Robyn's voice only grew louder. "No, Kody, you're the one embarrassing this family. You've turned this courtroom into a circus. And for what? To prove your power? To humiliate her? Or to cover up your own failures?" It was the line that broke everything. Kody's face constricted, his eyes tightening into slits. He seemed to be on the verge of exploding, of yelling something horrible, perhaps even leaving the house. But he simply stood there, unmoving, his chest rising and falling with his anger. The quiet was palpable. The cameras zoomed in, all of them focused on every flicker of his face. And then, at last, the judge's gavel rang out over the madness. "Enough," he bellowed. "This court is not a place for personal wars. We will have order, or we will adjourn at once." But the harm was already done. The world had witnessed all that it needed to see. Robyn slumped back into her chair, crying softly, hands clamped over her face. The fifth wife remained stiff, but her eyes flickered over Robyn with a hint of appreciation. And Kody, standing tall, appeared less and less like a man who was in charge, and increasingly like a man whose kingdom was disintegrating around him. The aftermath of that moment would echo far outside those courtroom walls. But within those four walls, all knew the reality. Robyn Brown, the wife once Kody's shield, had turned against him at last, and she did so in the most public, heartbreaking manner possible. As for the fifth wife, she remained still, her hands shaking at her sides. She didn't struggle, didn't yell, she just stared at Robyn, wide-eyed, as if silently pleading to be rescued. The home audience immediately took sides. Social media exploded like a wildfire. "Kody's gone too far this time. The fifth wife knew what she was getting into. She deserves it. Robyn's finally seeing the truth." The hashtags began to trend. #Kody exposed, #justice for fifth wife, and the strongest of all, #Robyn snaps. No longer a courtroom soap opera. It was now a cultural earthquake. As the courtroom trembled with Robyn's outburst and Kody's rage, there was one who remained strangely silent. The woman at the eye of the whirlwind. The rumored fifth wife. She didn't scream. She didn't protest. She didn't strike back in anger. Rather, she sat there, motionless with shock, her eyes wide with incredulity, as the officers waited anxiously in the background, waiting for the go-ahead to move in. And that silence turned out to be the most chilling sound in the room. In the bedlam of Kody's shouting, Robyn's sobbing fits, and the judge's gavel banging for order, the fifth wife's quietness appeared almost unnatural. Her face was pale, her lips quivering, but not a single word crossed her lips. She didn't protest Kody's accusations. She didn't plead for mercy. She didn't even demand to be heard. Rather, she just gazed. First at Kody, then at Robyn, and lastly down at her own hands, interlocked tightly together on her lap. Others in the gallery figured that her silence meant she was guilty. "She knows she's caught," they whispered among themselves. Others figured that it was the reverse, that her reluctance to play along was an act of dignity against public humiliation. She won't stoop to his level, a reporter muttered as he jotted down notes. And on live TV at home, fans began to analyze every flicker of her face. In seconds, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram exploded with analysis. Footage of her sitting there silently, her eyes wide and shining, under the bright lights of the courtroom, was played repeatedly. Her quiet stare speaks everything. She's scared. Observe the body language. See how she doesn't deny anything. Guilty vibes. No, she's not guilty. That's the face of a person who's been set up. Hashtags began to trend worldwide. #Justice for Fifth Wife. #Kody exposed. And #the silent plea. Some fans even made slow-motion clips examining her blinks, her stance, how she gripped her lap, while officers crept in. The courtroom had changed from a place of law. It was now a platform upon which silence was as powerful as speech. At one time the fifth wife raised her eyes and exchanged glances with Robyn. It was brief, but the glance struck like a lightning bolt. Her eyes shone with unshed tears. It wasn't a call to Robyn to rescue her. It was something more. It was acceptance. A nod of understanding that the two women on opposite sides of the war Kody had waged were both victims of the same tempest. Robyn's face relaxed. For a brief moment, her lips parted as if to say something, but nothing escaped. That brief moment of eye contact was photographed by the cameras and immediately became viral still images on the internet. Fans called it the look that changed everything. Some said it exhibited solidarity, others that it exposed things long hidden, but all had a consensus. It was the most human, uncut moment of the whole trial. As the fifth wife remained silent, the judge became more and more agitated. His bench was cluttered with papers and files, but none of them held what he sought. "Madam," he eventually spoke up, leaning across his bench, "do you want to reply to these accusations?" Everyone stared at her. The cameras zoomed in on her face. The audience crept forward, leaning in for a better look. She had her opportunity to speak, to defend herself, to stand up to Kody's accusations. But instead, she just shook her head. Not a defiant shake, not a dramatic one, just a small subtle jerk, barely perceptible, but enough to send another wave of shock through the courtroom. "She's not saying anything," a reporter whispered. "She's refusing to defend herself." Another added. The judge heaved a heavy sigh, banging his gavel against the table. "Very well," he stated, though there was an undercurrent of exasperation in his voice. "We shall do so." The two officers who were assigned to approach her did not budge immediately. They traded anxious looks, as if doubting whether it was right to arrest a woman who had yet to utter a single word. The silence deterred them. One of the officers stepped forward, but the fifth wife didn't even blink. She didn't struggle. She didn't beg. She just dropped her eyes to her lap once more, her fists clenching until her knuckles were white. It was as if she was submitting, not to guilt, but to necessity, to the inevitability that Kody had already prevailed by making her a sideshow. And that, in itself, was the most poignant picture of the day. On the internet, the argument only grew stronger. Some supporters wrote, "Her silence is her dignity. She won't give him the drama he craves. If she was innocent, she'd speak up. Guilty individuals are silent." Others said that quiet doesn't equal guilty. "She's afraid. Try being accused like this on live television, by the man who used to say he loved you." Talk shows that night, broadcast panel shows. Body language consultants were brought in to dissect her every gesture. Psychologists weighed the possibility that her silence was either trauma reaction or deliberate ploy. But one thing everyone did agree on. The fifth wife's silence had trumped any charge Kody might have uttered. Behind that silence, however, was a narrative, one viewers could only speculate upon. Was she drowning? Was she shattered by betrayal? Or was she playing it cool, biding her time until she could release her truth? To some, her silence made her human. They saw a trapped woman, cornered by a man of too much power, too much pride. To others, her silence was infuriating, a refusal to accept responsibility if she had indeed betrayed him. But whoever was on his side, the enigma of her silence turned into the pulse of the trial. Her silence was a weapon to Kody, though. The more she remained silent, the angrier he grew. His face contorted with anger as he pounded his hand against the table once more. "See," he bellowed. "She won't even deny it. That's because she knows it's true. She's guilty, and she thinks she can deceive all of you with her quiet pretense. Well, not me, not anymore." The judge attempted to rein him in, but Kody was beyond recall. He was riding his own anger, reading her silence as defiance instead of devastation. And the angrier he got, the more the viewers at home started seeing a different narrative play out. It was no longer about guilt or innocence. It was about control. About a man attempting to crush a woman in the most public, degrading manner possible. Finally, as the officers remained rooted to their spots, and the judge attempted to regain order once more, the fifth wife did something tiny, but indelible. She raised her eyes to the cameras. Not to Kody, not to Robyn, not to the judge, but to the millions watching at home. Her tear-brimming eyes locked onto the lens. It wasn't defiance, it wasn't begging, it was a quiet plea, an unspoken scream that said, "See me, see what he's doing. See the truth I can't say out loud." That expression, recorded in high definition, was immediately the most viewed photograph of the trial. It showed up on news websites, in memes, in thousands of social media updates. It was the expression of a woman torn between guilt and innocence, strength and defeat, truth and silence. And in that instant, her silence was her voice. By the time the judge took a recess, the courtroom was a buzz louder than ever before. Robyn was still shaking from her tantrum, Kody fuming with irritation, and the fifth wife was sitting quietly, her silence now louder than all their collective words together. The world was split. Was she guilty? Was she innocent? Or was she just a pawn in a war that cared nothing for justice and everything for control? One thing for sure. Her silence would haunt not only Kody, not only Robyn, but every single person who had seen the trial. Because sometimes, the loudest screams are the ones you never hear. The officers vacillated, not sure if they should follow up. The judge thumped the gavel, calling for order, but nothing could mute the confrontation, now playing out before all of their eyes. Robyn faced Kody, her voice trembling, but her tongue lashing. "You speak of betrayal, but what of yours? What of the promises you dishonored? What of the lies you've told us all?" Kody's face grew dark. He pounded his hand on the table. "You don't know what she's done, Robyn. You don't realize the danger she's put in our lives." But Robyn wasn't backing down. For the first time in years, she was challenging him, not in whispers behind closed doors, but live in front of the entire world. "No, Kody," she cried. "The danger isn't her. The danger is you. The danger is what you've become." Gasps filled the room. The judge slammed his gavel down, calling for silence. But it was too late. The moment had already seared itself into television history. The fifth wife's silence had unsettled the room. But it was Robyn who triggered the next explosion. Initially, she sat quivering in her chair, her fingers nervously drumming against the wood, her lips quivering as she fought to contain herself. But then something snapped inside her. The tears evaporated, her breathing steadied, and her eyes hardened with fire. She stood, slowly, intentionally. And when she finally spoke, her voice wasn't cracked anymore. It was bitter, angry, and not to be denied. "Enough, Kody," she snapped, her voice cutting through the room like a lash. All heads in the courtroom swiveled toward her. The cameras focused, even the judge sat forward, sensing that what was about to come wasn't legal testimony. It was bare, unadulterated truth. Kody stood rigid for a moment, shocked at her tone. Robyn was always the faithful one, the protector, the wife who stood by him no matter when everyone else walked away. But now she wasn't standing by him. She was standing against him. Her chest was rising and falling as she glared from across the room. Do you even hear yourself at that moment? You're tearing apart all those around you, just to validate that you are in the right. You've made this courtroom your stage, this family your tool. And that woman, she gestured toward the unobtrusive fifth wife, into your punching bag. And why? For pride? For power? The accusation burned. Kody's face became red as he smacked his hands on the table and stood up. "Don't you dare lecture me," he shouted. "Don't you dare act like you don't recognize what betrayal is. I have given up everything for this family, and all I receive in return is loyalty." His anger was shaking his voice, but Robyn remained steadfast. She leaned in, her eyes scorching holes into him. "Sacrifice? Don't interpret the word. You don't sacrifice. You manipulate. You don't love, you command. And you don't protect. You punish. That's not family, Kody, that's terror." Gasps rippled through the courtroom. The crowd leaned forward, entranced. This was no longer a legal proceeding. This was the dissolution of a marriage in real life, a conflict of loyalty versus pride. "Order," the judge boomed, banging his gavel. "I require order in this courtroom." But the gavel couldn't stand up to Robyn's wrath or Kody's vanity. They weren't hearing her. They weren't even addressing the court anymore. They were addressing each other. And to the millions viewing in real time, the judge at last leaned back in his chair, realizing he no longer had the room under his control. The cameras were. Gasps, murmurs, and whispers filled the gallery. Some leaned into one another, whispering, "Did she just call him out? I've never seen Robyn like this. She's usually so calm. This is history in the making." Even the reporters, usually so composed, looked shaken as they scribbled notes at lightning speed. One journalist muttered, "This is bigger than a trial. It's a public execution of their marriage." And they weren't wrong. Robyn's voice cracked now, not from weakness, but from the sheer force of her emotion. "Do you have a clue what it's like living with you? To tiptoe on eggshells each and every day, never sure if you're going to be enraged, or sulky, or accusatory. Do you have any idea what it's like watching you destroy people, to shun them, to belittle them, while simultaneously rationalizing that you're the victim?" The courtroom fell silent once more. Even Kody's fury failed as her words cut deeper than any accusation ever could. Robyn's hands shook as she pointed at him. "You don't want a wife, Kody. You want a soldier. Someone who listens. Someone who bows." "But I won't bow anymore." For an instant, Kody simply glared at her, his jaw set, his body shaking with fury. Then he erupted. "You thankless," he bellowed, his voice cracking like thunder. "All you have is thanks to me. Without me, you'd be nothing. Don't you ever forget that, Robyn." The words lingered in the air like venom. The audience recoiled. Even the judge shook his head in shock. But Robyn did not back down. Rather, she leaned closer, her voice low and powerful. "Without you, Kody, I'd finally find peace." That one sentence shook the courtroom. It wasn't a rebuttal. It was a statement, a warning, the truth. Throughout the exchange, the fifth wife did not say a word, but her gaze pursued every word, every movement, every tantrum. Some observed the way her lips parted, as if she would say something, but nothing would escape them. She became the quiet witness to the devastation, the mirror holding up the destruction Kody's anger had wrought. When Robyn indicated that she desired peace, the fifth wife's eyes watered with recognition, as if she knew that desire more than any other person in the room. Her silence now did not look so much like fear, but rather like consent. By this point, the viewers at home had formed an opinion. Social media hummed. Robyn finally snapped. "And she's right. This isn't about betrayal anymore. It's about Kody's ego." She just ended him with that one line. "Without you, I'd finally have peace." Clips of her fiery speech spread like wildfire. Memes, hashtags, and reaction videos flooded the internet. Within minutes, #Robyn, vs Kody was trending worldwide. For the first time, Robyn was not the passive, devoted wife. She was the warrior. The woman who dared to challenge the man who had once appeared untouchable. At last, the judge had had enough. He slammed the gavel so forcefully that the sound rang out like a gunshot. "Enough," he thundered. "This is not a battlefield for your personal battles. This is a courtroom. If either of you persists in treating it like a stage, I will find you in contempt." His warning stilled the room, momentarily. But the damage had been done. The world had been shown the truth. As the judge ordered a recess, Robyn slumped back into her chair, her body shaking with the force of what she had unleashed. Her face was white, her eyes damp, but her face was firm. For the first time in years, she hadn't simply spoken. She had fought back. Kody, however, stood stiff, his chest heaving and falling like a tempest, barely in check. His pride was injured, his self-command shattered, and his persona, previously one of strength and mastery, now cracked for all to witness. And as they sat on opposite sides of the courtroom, the cameras picked up what everyone already knew. This wasn't just a trial. This was the end of a marriage. Recess ended, and the tension hung in the air like smoke after a fire. The audience murmured, the reporters frantically typed away, and the people at home sat frozen in front of their screens, ready for whatever came next. Would Robyn still stand firm? Would Kody lash back with vengeance? Would the fifth wife finally speak out? One thing was for sure, the confrontation between Robyn and Kody had altered everything. Their battle was no longer a secret. It was public, savage, and irrevocable. And the world couldn't help but watch. The hearing descended into pandemonium. The fifth wife was led out, albeit not in handcuffs, but in protective custody, as lawyers fought to get their heads around the charges. The judge had to adjourn the court, but the full tempest was yet to come. Outside the courthouse, there were cameras all around, reporters yelling out questions. Fans stood around, waiting to see if they could catch a glimpse of the Browns as they exited the building. But this time there was a difference. Robyn was not standing alongside Kody. She walked away from him, her face streamed with tears, her body language shouting betrayal. Kody attempted to remain calm, but the cameras recorded every flare of anger, every moment of his breakdown. Reporters yelled, "Kody, is this the end of your marriage? Robyn, are you leaving him? What happens next?" But they did not respond. The courtroom was a war zone soaked in silence. After recess, the walls appeared to resonate with Robyn's passionate tantrum and Kody's deafening fury. The fifth wife remained immobile, her silence etched deeper than ever, while the reporters swarmed with whispers, their pens scratching against pages like irritable insects. When the judge came back onto the bench, the air was thick with tension. Cameras zoomed in tight. People sitting at home in their living rooms leaned in closer to the screen. They all knew, this was the moment everything would shift. "All rise." The bailiff barked. The whole room rose, the creaky wooden benches groaning under dozens of bodies holding their breath. The judge adjusted his glasses, his expression stern but weary. "This has been one of the most chaotic, emotionally charged hearings I have ever presided over. And while I cannot allow theatrics to overshadow facts, I also cannot ignore what has unfolded here in full view of the public." He lingered, allowing the quiet to hang like a noose. The world hung on. Kody straightened, his chin up, certain the verdict would justify his rage. He smiled smugly at the cameras, then at Robyn, as if provoking her to deflect him again. "This ends today." He breathed into his fists. But for once, his confidence was brittle. A thin mask stretched over desperation. Robyn, shaken from her explosion, sat in silence now. But her silence wasn't submission. Her words of before still lingered like smoke, and though tired, her eyes sparkled with defiance. She wasn't afraid anymore. Not of Kody, not of the cameras, not of the fallout. She had told her truth, and the world had heard it. Then there was the fifth wife, the female center of the storm, still quiet, still inscrutable, but this time her silence was deliberate, as if she knew the verdict would speak for itself without her saying a word. Millions viewing live mouthed the same question. Was she guilty, or was she the quietest victim of them all? At last the judge cleared his throat. His gavel lay on the bench, but his voice had more authority than the wood ever had. "After listening to the testimonies, evidence, and behavior exhibited in this courtroom, I must clarify two things. First, no one should be damned without irrefutable evidence of guilt. Second, the poisonous dynamics I've seen here are not issues of law, but issues of humanity, issues of a family fractured." Gasps spread throughout the gallery. Kody's self-satisfied smile began to falter. Robyn edged forward. The fingers of the fifth wife quivered on her lap. "My decision is thus," the judge went on. "The so-called fifth wife's accusations are dismissed for lack of evidence. She can leave." The room burst apart. Journalists sprinted for their phones to fire headlines around the world. The crowd applauded, some even smiling and clapping, while others gasped in horror. "Kody," he erupted. "What?" he yelled, his voice shattering. He pounded his hand against the table so violently the microphones shrieked into feedback. You can't just release her. She betrayed me. She destroyed everything. But his objections only made him seem smaller, more desperate, more broken. Robyn put her hand over her mouth. Not shock, but relief. Tears welled up in her eyes. But this time they weren't because she was scared. They were because she was freed. And what about the fifth wife? She breathed at last. A weak, quivering sigh. The sort that uttered liberty, even if only for an instant. Mr. Brown, the judge barked, his gavel coming down hard. That is enough. This is not your theater in this courtroom for personal grudges. You have made what should have been a quest for justice into an ego circus. And let this be noted. Your actions today have spoken more forcefully than any evidence you tried to offer. The words sting more than any verdict. Kody slumped back in his chair, his face ashen, his confidence broken before the world. For the first time, the cameras didn't record a proud patriarch or a foaming warrior. They recorded a man coming apart at the seams. The bailiff strode up to the fifth wife, not to take her into custody, but to escort her out alive. She got up slowly, her legs stiff, her eyes flicking once to Robyn, and then moving toward the doors. The room went quiet as she walked by Kody. He scowled at her, venom in his eyes, but she didn't even glance back. That simple denial, that silent refusal to even give him a look, hurt more than any words ever had. The doors shut on her, and with that, she vanished. Robyn sat in place, eyeing Kody. She said nothing. She did not have to. Her silence now rang with authority. The world had witnessed him. They had witnessed her. And the truth no longer had to be screamed. It had been lived on live television. Kody grumbled to himself, his head shaking, holding the table tight as a man clinging to a foundering vessel. The judge banged the session to a close, his gavel falling for the last time. Court is dismissed. If the courtroom was pandemonium, the internet was a conflagration. Headlines flashed across every major site. Fifth wife set free in incendiary courtroom clash. Robyn Brown betrays Kody. During live trial. Kody embarrassed. After judge throws case out. Videos of Robyn's angry speech went viral in a matter of hours. Memes for Kody's breakdown went viral. And the walkout by the fifth wife was one of reality television's most retweeted moments. Hashtags went trending worldwide. #Robyn. V's Kody. #fifth wife freed. #Kody exposed. #courtroom chaos reaction. Videos flooded the internet. Late-night talk shows mocked Kody's fall. Podcasts analyzed each shot of the trial. For several weeks it ruled the cultural discourse. Robyn was the surprise champion. No longer the demure loyalist. She was the voice of insurrection. Her fans congratulated her on her bravery, dubbing her the woman who finally stood up. Some even called for her to be given her own show. Kody, on the other hand, was dealt the worst damage. His image was ruined. From the dominant figure of polygamy notoriety, he was now considered a broken man trapped by pride and fueled by anger. Sponsors withdrew. Public sympathy disappeared. He was the bad guy in his own book. The fifth wife was an enigma. Her silence during the trial served to fuel public intrigue. Was she innocent? A victim? A long-game strategist? No one had a clue. But that last move, walking away in silence, made her a legend. Months later, a video of Robyn exiting the courthouse alone appeared again. She wasn't grinning, but she seemed lighter, freer. And for the first time, she wasn't walking with Kody. She was walking alone. Kody, on the other hand, was seen walking away alone, shoulders hunched, his bright eyes dulled. The man who always lived for control now had nothing to control. The fifth wife disappeared from view altogether, her silence persisting long after the cameras went dark. And perhaps that was the whole idea. Occasionally silence says the loudest truth. Months later, still, people were gossiping. Documentaries were in development. Streaming services pleaded for exclusive access to the footage. Social media kept the saga going in edits, theories, and fan fiction. The trial hadn't simply ended a marriage or vindicated a woman's name. It had brought to light the fissures in a man who had founded his life on domination. And it had provided two women an opportunity to reclaim their voices. One through passionate resistance, the other through unshakable quiet. And the world could not look away. As credits of this epic rolled in real life, one thing hung in the air like smoke after a blaze. Power can yell, pride can burn, but sometimes the voices that alter everything are the ones that will not remain quiet. and the ones that dare to finally say enough. Hours later, the internet was melting down. Talk shows rewound the video. Podcasts analyzed every sentence. And social media was a war zone of comments. There were some who referred to Kody as a manipulator, employing the courtroom as his personal drama. Others felt the silence of the fifth wife indicated that she was concealing something serious. And then there were those who fixated on Robyn, finally perceiving her as a victim, and not as an accomplice. A woman pushed too hard by the man she had come to believe could be trusted. The hashtags continued to trend for days, garnering millions of views, making it one of the highest watched reality courtroom moments ever. The courtroom lights went down, the cameras were stowed away, and the judge's gavel fell quiet. But outside its walls, the tempest was only just starting. If the trial was the explosion, the fallout was the blaze that swept across every aspect of Kody's life. And the world watched it burn. The courthouse steps were turned into a stage of chaos. Microphones were pushed forward by reporters. Cameras popped like lightning, and questions came from all angles. Robyn, do you regret defending him for so long? Kody, how do you react to the charges being dropped? Fifth wife, where will you go now? Only one individual, however, offered to respond. Robyn. She stood at the foot of the stairs, voice firm amidst the throng around her. All I'll say, she breathed into the microphones, is that the truth has already been seen, and I won't be silent anymore. Those words, short, raw, and absolute, illuminated every front page. Robyn breaks free. Brown family empire shattered. The truth has already been seen. The fifth wife disappeared into the night without a word. Kody stormed past the reporters, his face twisted with fury, muttering, "You'll all regret this." But instead of commanding sympathy, his words only painted him further as the villain. Back online, the world was split. On TikTok, clips of Robyn yelling, "I won't bow anymore," went viral to millions of views within hours. Instagram Reels featured the fifth wife's eerie silence in slow motion, accompanied by dramatic sound. Twitter, now known as X, was on fire with memes lampooning Kody's breakdown. But there was a darker corner as well, where die-hard loyalists to Kody believed he had been betrayed by all. "He's the only one who knows the truth," they wrote. "The world is blind." It wasn't a trial anymore. It was a war of cultures. In the background, the remainder of the Brown family continued to break apart. Janelle and Christine, who had spent years distancing themselves from Kody, offered thinly veiled statements to the press. Christine wrote cryptically, "Peace comes when you let go of control." Janelle tweeted merely, "Some things end because they should." Fans lapped up their words, reading them as daggers pointed directly at Kody. Meanwhile, the kids, long kept in the dark, started crying out on social media. One wrote a TikTok declaring, "We grew up with chaos. Now the world finally sees what we lived through." It spread like wildfire overnight. For the first time ever, the family's behind-the-scenes cracks weren't hushed rumors. They were aired for the world to devour. Kody attempted to push back. He made a tempestuous livestream days following the trial, walking around in front of the camera, his voice quivering. "This isn't the truth," he bellowed. "This is betrayal. Simple as that. The media want to take me down. My family wants to take me down. But I will not be taken down." But rather than win sympathy, the tirade became meme material. His furious pacing was looped, his yelling remixed into anthems. What he perceived as a comeback only further solidified the ridicule. Brands that had previously partnered with the family dropped them quietly. Streaming services rethought deals. Even fan pages dedicated to the show started closing. Kody wasn't losing a wife or a case in court. He was losing the decades-long empire he had built. While Kody spun out of control, Robyn's profile changed. Talk shows requested her as a guest. Editorials applauded her strength. Fans hailed her as the voice of every woman who's ever lived under control. But Robyn did not luxuriate in the glory. She did not upload glamorous selfies or luxuriate in the glory. Rather, she came quietly, selecting each word she spoke. In an interview, she remarked, "I remained silent for too long. Silence guards the wrong people. I will not allow that to be my tale any longer." Her authenticity rang. Ratings skyrocketed. And for the first time in years, she was no longer regarded as Kody's shadow. She was her own power. But the person who captivated the public most was the fifth wife. She disappeared after the trial. Without a word, no interviews, no posts. Her silence just created more rumors. Was she hiding, healing, getting ready for her own reveal? Reddit forums hummed with speculation. Some said she was penning a tell-all memoir. Others thought she was brokering a media contract. A few suspected she had fled the country entirely. The silence she'd had in court now became her legacy, and viewers were fixated. Weeks afterward, buzz went around about the family thinking about legal action, not against the fifth wife, but against Kody himself. Claims of emotional manipulation, financial domination, and secrets buried deep for years started to emerge. Former friends of the family spoke out, dropping hints about tales that hadn't yet been revealed. Abruptly, the trial did not feel like the conclusion of a saga, but rather the first chapter of something greater. On YouTube, montage videos of Kody's most egregious courtroom gaffes garnered millions of views. Footage of Robyn yelling, "That's not family, that's fear," became hooks for motivational montages. Podcasts did weekly deep dives. Reaction channels dissected every moment, every gesture, every scowl. TikTok users spliced his rants into comedy skits. The world had interpreted Kody's trial as it saw fit, and no amount of his attempts to hide it would make the world forget. There was one haunting photo that ensured his fall. A paparazzi shot emerged of Kody sitting alone in a booth at a diner, blankly staring at a plate of half-eaten food. No family around. No cameras, no control. It caught like wildfire. The title, "The Man Who Wanted Everything, Now Has Nothing." It was merciless. But it was real. Months on, documentaries were broadcast. Streaming services launched specials, analyzing the trial, all painted Kody as a warning of pride, of ego, of the devastation that results when control supplants love. Robyn was positioned as the survivor, the fifth wife as the mystery, the children as the real victims. And Kody, the guy who once ruled a family empire, became a footnote in his own history, remembered more for his fall than his vision. The trial was finished, the verdict had been delivered. But the reverberations of that courtroom fight would plague the Browns forever. Because ultimately, it wasn't merely a tale of betrayal. It wasn't merely a family brawl. It was a life lesson the world couldn't afford to forget. Pride kills, control strangles. And sometimes, the greatest strength lies not in yelling, but in finally getting up and leaving. As the dust settles, the only question is what next? For Robyn, this may be the tipping point that finally drives her away from Kody. For the fifth wife, though, the fight is just getting started. Her silence can now become testimony that could upend everything. And for Kody, this public debacle might be the moment that destroys what little is left of his power and prestige. But here's the true twist. Insiders say there's even more we don't know. Secret papers, concealed proof, and relatives willing to come forward. If that's the case, then this courtroom melee wasn't the end. It was merely the beginning of much greater scandal. The courtroom had grown quiet. The media frenzy had started to die down to background chatter, and the dust of Kody Brown's demise seemed to settle. But for those who believed the saga was over, they were mistaken. Because in the darkest of shadows, rumors of something yet more formidable started to emerge. Rumors that could create a firestorm greater than anything the Browns had previously experienced. Weeks following the trial, an unsigned envelope was delivered to a major news network. No return address, no name, only a white manila envelope with a single word slathered across the face in unsteady black letters. Evidence, photos, papers, and what appeared to be recordings filled the envelope. But they weren't of the trial just concluded. They were of something else, something sinister, hidden far beneath the sheen of TV icon that the family had put forth for decades. One reporter said privately, "If this is real, it's bigger than anything that's happened so far." The envelope was only the beginning. Just as the internet began calming down, the fifth wife's silence cracked. A grainy video appeared online. Her face half hidden in shadow, her voice calm but haunting. "You've only seen the surface," she said. "The truth hasn't been told yet. But it will be." The clip took less than 30 seconds, but it blew up on all platforms. Who shot it? Where was she? And what truth was she speaking of? Fans vowed her eyes shone with terror. Others claimed it was rage. But one thing was certain, she wasn't lost. She was getting ready for something. Meanwhile, paparazzi lenses photographed Robyn secretly having dinner in a dingy cafe with an acclaimed investigative reporter. They leaned in close, spoke in hushed tones, and exited through different doors. Speculation broke out. Was Robyn feeding information? Was she finally ready to lay it all out about all that had been going on behind closed doors? Or was she guarding herself before the next bombshell fell? She declined to comment, but her enigmatic Instagram message later in the evening stoked the flames. Some truths are too dangerous to keep locked away. On the opposing side, Kody wasn't finished fighting. Leaked audio surfaced of him on the phone with an unknown ally, slamming his fist against a table. They think I'm finished? I'll show them. I'll bury them before they bury me. For a man who had already lost his reputation, his family, and his empire, those words didn't sound like surrender. They sounded like a warning. And if Kody had secrets remaining, the world was soon going to find out about them the hard way. Next came the voices no one anticipated. The children. They broke their silence one by one on social media. It was subtle at first, cryptic posts, cryptic quotes, but things became undeniable soon. A daughter posted a video claiming, "We grew up in a story the cameras never told. The things you didn't see were worse than what you did." A son posted enigmatically, "The trial wasn't the truth. The real truth hasn't even come out yet." Their unscripted, unrehearsed voices bore a weight that no transcript in any courtroom could ever provide. Fans were clamoring for a full tell-all, but not from the parents this time. The children who actually endured it all. Step in the journalist. Rumors started circulating about a documentary in production, one that would uncover the untold story of the Browns. Sources said the journalist Robyn interviewed had been searching for months, perhaps years, collecting testimony from insiders, producers, and even family members estranged. The title in development, Behind Closed Doors, The Brown Truth. If it were to air, it wouldn't just rock reality TV. It would break the reputation of the entire Brown family for all eternity. As gossip mushroomed, so did factions. Some behind-the-scenes people speculated that Robyn and the fifth wife had communicated in secret. True, the woman who shrieked in Kody's defense secretly teaming up with the one who took him to court? If so, their united voices might be the hammer that broke Kody once and for all. But if Kody learned about their partnership, how would he prevent it? And then, when the world was sure things couldn't get any more out of control, something else appeared online. A leaked court document. It suggested a new case was filed. Sealed records, unidentified plaintiffs, charges much more serious than before. The headlines blared, "Is Kody Brown facing new charges?" The case isn't over after all. No one had any idea what was in the filings. The courts stayed mum. The lawyers said nothing. And the Browns, well, they were gearing up for war. The trial may be over, but the Browns' tale is far from finished. If anything, the real fight has only just started. Because secrets are being revealed. Alliances are breaking. And the fifth wife, the quiet storm, has sworn the world hasn't yet seen the whole truth. So the question lingers. Will Kody make it through what's heading his way? Or is this the ultimate chapter in his empire, with the most devastating surprise still lurking in the wings? Stay tuned. The storm isn't over, it's just building momentum. So ask yourself this, was Kody defending his family, or was he making a public display to ruin a woman he couldn't dominate? Was the fifth wife guilty of betrayal, or another casualty in Kody's perpetual desire for power? And most important of all, has Robyn finally hit her breaking point? One thing's for sure. Whatever went down on live court TV will forever haunt the Browns. Families shatter in private every day, but this family, they shattered before the whole world. And if you thought the drama was done, guess again. Because when it comes to Kody Brown, there's always another surprise lurking just around the bend. The courtroom fight might have been done, but the tempest was hardly over. If the trial revealed fissures in Kody Brown's kingdom, what ensued destroyed the foundation on which he'd built his life. For years, Kody's kids had played behind the scenes, quiet witnesses to their father's drama, tucked away behind expertly produced TV scenes. But silence is only so sound. And when the kids finally broke their silence, their words were louder, sharper, and more destructive than the world could have ever anticipated. It started with a single tweet. One of Kody's older kids posted a brief TikTok late one evening. The clip was straightforward. Her sitting on her bed, red-rimmed eyes from sobbing, her voice quivering but firm. "You've all watched the trial," she started. "You've all watched the brawls, the yelling, the lies. But you don't know what it was like to be there. You were. And it was worse than anything you heard on television." The video ended after 30 seconds. No information, no names. Only raw anguish. Within a few hours, it reached 1 million views. Overnight, it was all over. On Twitter threads, Instagram reels, YouTube breakdowns. Fans pleaded for more. Critics clamored for evidence. Supporters showered her comments with affection. The hush was broken, and more voices quickly followed. Slowly, the children spoke out, one at a time. A son put up a cryptic Instagram post. "We weren't a family. We were an empire built on fear." Another daughter tweeted, "The cameras never showed the worst nights. They never could." Soon entire live streams appeared. Some kids cried as they told their stories, others spoke with fury, their voices shaking with years of bottled-up anger. They revealed favoritism, emotional neglect, nights of chaos hidden behind closed doors. They painted a picture of a father obsessed with control, a man who thrived on dividing his own household. It wasn't drama anymore. It was testimony, unadulterated, uncomplicated, and no longer ignorable. The internet erupted. Reaction channels broke down each word. Podcasts replayed the kids' voices, dissecting every nuance. News outlets jumped on the story, casting it as the next installment in the Brown family's disintegration. But above all else, the public changed. Where before Kody still had a small group of apologists, now even they were having difficulty rationalizing his actions. The children's voices pierced the din in a way that no court could, because who was going to disagree with kids finally speaking their truth? But the biggest bombshell dropped during one live stream. A son leaned into the lens, eyes black with intensity, and had this to say: "You think the trial revealed everything? It didn't. We kept things. We kept evidence. And when the time is right, everyone will see it." That one sentence shattered the internet. What evidence? Documents? Audio recordings? Photos? Speculation ran amok. Some fans thought the children were secretly filming Kody for years. Others assumed they had access to family diaries, letters, or even behind-the-scenes television show recordings. Whatever it was, the potential for proof caused shockwaves throughout the fan community, and within Kody himself. Kody's reaction was quick. He went on another angry livestream, his face reddening, his hands pounding the table. "These are my children," he yelled. "My own children, being used against me by individuals who seek to kill me. They're being manipulated, brainwashed. It's all a lie." But his tantrum boomeranged. Rather than shutting the kids up, it only energized them. Footage of his tirade went viral, with such hashtags as "the guilty always scream the loudest." The children doubled down. A daughter posted afterward, "Dad, stop calling us liars. We're just telling the truth you've tried to hide." The rift between the children and father was now public, irreparable. Talk shows extended invitations to the kids for interviews. Documentaries rushed to include their voices. A famous news anchor began a segment with "We've heard the wives. We've witnessed the trial. But tonight we hear from the ones who lived through it day by day, the children." Clips were going viral. On-camera tears. Tales of fear, control, and breached trust. The children weren't participants in the drama anymore. They were now at its center. Amid the children's rebellion, one unexpected response came from the fifth wife. She had been quiet for weeks, keeping a low profile from the limelight. But once the kids started speaking up, she put up a solitary message on her inactive social media page. "Believe them." 3 little words. But they pack a punch like dynamite. Fans ran to put 2 and 2 together. Did that imply she knew the same truth? Was her silence throughout connected to what the children were now revealing? Abruptly, she was no longer an enigma. She was a possible ally, one who could emerge once more. But this time with the children in tow. Robyn, stuck in the middle, reached her own breaking point. At first she remained silent, attempting to protect her own kids from the tempest. But paparazzi were quick to snap her exiting a lawyer's office, white-faced and exhausted. Speculation flew. Was she preparing for a case of her own, or was she defending the children against Kody? When confronted by reporters, she would only say, "I'm listening. I hear them, and I can't stay silent forever." Her words suggested something larger. Perhaps Robyn wasn't finished. Perhaps she was getting ready to join with the voices previously silenced. The children's uprising fueled the culture war online. The fans applauded their bravery. "They're so brave for speaking out." The critics issued warnings of exploitation. "They're just kids being thrust into the spotlight." The conspiracy theorists worked overtime on fanciful speculations. This was all staged in advance by the wives. But there was one thing for sure. The story wasn't dying. It was growing, changing, becoming more perilous for Kody by the day. The children's rebellion reached its climax when the eldest of the daughters threatened a bombshell. On a live Kenda, she was quizzed about whether the children intended to make public the evidence they had alluded to. She leaned in, spoke quietly and said, "Let's just say if the world thought the trial was shocking, they haven't seen anything yet." The screen faded to black. The live was over, and the internet lost its mind. Was this the evidence they had been hinting at? Were the kids going to present evidence powerful enough to reopen the case? Would this bring down the final pieces of Kody's empire once and for all? No one was really certain. But this much was true. The children had emerged from the darkness. And now the world was hearing their voices. The trial rocked the family. The verdict shattered their foundation. But it was the children, the ones who Kody believed would never betray him, who inflicted the deepest wound. And with rumors of secret evidence still hanging in the air, the ultimate question remained. If the children break their silence and come out with all they've been hiding, would it finally kill Kody Brown for good? Tune in. The true battle might not be between Kody and his wives. It might be between Kody and his own kids.